Hello, thank you for staying until the last one. My name is Sofia Salas, and I will be talking the work that I've been doing on polarization in Colombia. This is an ongoing work, and it's a topic that is very close to my heart. Thank you very much, Mr. Topol, for being here and for your generous support. Thank you, Erica and Doug, for your kindness and your generosity throughout these months. And thank you to my fellow Topol Fellows. So, every day when I get up and I check my phone, this bad habit of checking my phone when I wake up, I'm very afraid of what I will find in the news of my country. This is not recent, but I might find things like Colombia being divided by a plebiscite that looks for peace, ironically. Regions where the conflict was harder, voting dramatically for the yes, but people in the cities voting for the no. The presidential election being to be defined between the far right and the far left. The lower house rejecting changes to the peace process, which was a good thing, but then, the rejection was, in my opinion, a good thing, but then the Senate not being able to support the decision by the chamber, or the two of the opposition leaders to be knocked out of Congress. It can also be that a former president calls a leader from the left that he's a killer in front of the TV, in front of other representatives, as if we were in the middle of the street, or that a baby a few months old is killed just because he was the son of two former guerrilla members. Or it can be that social leaders are being killed more than they were killed when we were in the middle of the conflict. So every day I ask myself, how can we create an alternative narrative to polarization, and this fellowship offered the possibility to think what guidance can nonviolence provide to this. What I did is just identify the key elements of polarization, and then think of a new way to approach the narratives. I used 4 theoretical inputs, and what I did was I did a lot of interviews, talked to a lot of people, and did a lot of great literature review. So I found 3 insights about polarization in Colombia. I'll just make a small note. All the pictures here are from Jesus Abad, Colorado, who is an amazing photographer who has been everywhere where we have needed him to report on what was going on. So all the pictures are from him. So the first insight is polarization is part of Colombia's history and identity. Since the Republic was created in the 19th century, the 2 most important fighters for peace, they were fighting together, but they ended up hating each other because their vision of the country was very different, and they ended up dividing the country on how this vision should be. Then fast forward to 1948, one leader, a populist leader, is killed, and we go into what we call la violencia, the violence, liberals against conservatives. People say the only difference between them was that they went to mass at a different time, but 10 years of people killing each other. Then fast forward to the 60s, and we have, this is just a sample of the number of guerrilla groups that we had. We also had the paramilitary. Then we had this being very complex with the narcos playing their part. And for example, 1994, where the country was absolutely divided on whether the president should be revoked or not for an alleged scandal of his links with the paramilitaries. All throughout this polarization in history, we have also had a lot of attempts to negotiate and a lot of attempts to make peace, some of them more successful than others. There's a picture of one of these attempts to put end to divisions in 1991, which the result of which was our current constitution. Then fast forward to the beginning of the 21st century, where we have Uribe and Santos, who, like Santander and Bolivar, were friends, and then ended up in different parts of history fighting for different visions of the country. Then, once again, Colombia being deeply polarized around peace, the yes and the no. And then, where we are now is just a sample of the news that we find that shows how polarized we are. The second insight is that nowadays polarization is not driven by difference between left and right as it is in many places, but it's driven by personalities and very emotional issues. There's a lot that has been written on this, both theoretically and practically. There are a lot of affections that are being involved, and something that's very important that was found very recently through the Latino Ardometro survey, which is done periodically, is that people associate issues with certain elites, and they follow what they say no matter what. So some experiments have been done to see if people change their opinions associated with different people, and one person can have a different position depending on who says what they say. The third finding is that, as well as polarization and violence is part of our history and our identity, ironically, for the last 5 decades, it has also coexisted with relatively strong institutions and a culture of dissent and resistance. That's true also for today. Having the leaders of the FARC in Congress is a proof of that. Having Uribe and Petro fighting over Twitter and fighting in Congress, although sometimes very rudely, is also a show that there is a culture of dissent. And there have been nonviolent resistance. There has been nonviolent resistance throughout the years of Congress. So we have this tension, and we're holding a tension between this polarization and this culture of dissent and democratic institutions. So what can we do with this, and how can we imagine new nonviolent narratives that counter this polarization? I used 4 different theoretical frameworks, and what I found is that we have to change the characters, but we also have to honor the characters and the personalities. We have to honor the role that each one of them has played, and this has been very difficult until now. We have to overcome the moral superiority that some of the liberal progressives, and I include myself there, have acquired in this situation. We have to think of who gets to tell the story and what part of the story each of us gets to tell. We have to think about what people are losing, how they are holding conflict, and who needs to do the work, how citizens need to do the work and stop claiming politicians to do the work for them solely. And we have to be capable of imagining something different. We have to be capable of building relationships and recognizing how we are interconnected with our enemies. We have to have a genuine desire to see where our enemies or adversaries are standing. We have to be creative enough to think that a new narrative is possible. And we have to be willing to take risks for peace. Finally, and what has the most valuable thing of these 6 months is thinking of nonviolence and the 2 hands of nonviolence, which is one hand pushing very hard and resisting against those who are polarizing us and telling them we don't want to keep being divided, but it's also one hand pulling us together and recognizing how all of us are human and to recognize the humanity in each other. What I've done with all these frameworks and the insights is I've written 3 letters. Maybe there will become more, but I wrote 1 letter that the plan is to send them. 1 to Álvaro Uribe, which will be very hard. He's my least favorite person in the world. But it's a letter acknowledging mostly what I said in the beginning, acknowledging how his contributions were also very relevant to where we are and where his responsibilities are and what we expect, or someone like me expects from him in his humanity. The other one is Gustavo Petro, another person I don't like that much. Those were the 2 runner-ups in the last election, but Uribe not himself, but someone from his party. He was a former guerrilla member of the N19. He was very important in the 1991 Constitution. But he's playing a very important role in polarizing, and he's playing the game of polarization. So I think he's very important. And the most important one, and the hardest letter to write, is writing a letter to my fellow liberal progressive citizens. And in writing this letter, I have recognized how blind we have been in many occasions to see that we are embedded in this narrative and that we are nurturing this narrative and that we are not really contributing to building an alternative narrative. So you know what? I will send the letters, publish the letters. I invite people to join me in this endeavor and to think in each of your different contexts how you are being part of the polarizing narrative and how nonviolence can guide our approach, and the two hands of nonviolence can guide our approach to countering polarization, but also embracing polarization and holding the tension of conflict and finding ways to make conflict productive.